Okay, so I've got myself set up. Basically, I've got my 3 sets of beads that I'm going to use for my pattern. I've got my Nymo thread. Oh, forgot to cut it. And I've got to string my my needle. I like to use an extra long needle. That's just my particular preference, but again, it's whatever you want. You want to make sure that obviously your needle, whatever it is going to be longer than whatever happens to be on your loom. Because when you collect the needle, collect the beads, if your needle is too short and the beads fall off, you're not going to be happy. If they fall off backwards this way onto the thread, you're not going to be happy. Okay, so basically, because I have larger looms, I do prefer a longer needle, but that's just a total preference for me. The pattern that I'm doing, I've changed it because for just various reasons, but this is basically the pattern that I'm doing here. I just kind of used regular grid paper there. I did one already for my husband, and it ended up being too long. So I measured his wrist incorrectly, and his wrist is 7 inches instead of 7.5. So when I made the actual bracelet and I put on the clasp and everything, unfortunately, at the end of that, it was way too long. It was falling off his wrist. So I'm trying to make another one. I had to adjust my design again. But what we're going to do, basically, I'm going to show you how to start it off. The first 2 rows are always the toughest. And we're literally going to be following. Okay, so what I did is I basically numbered. As you can see, I've numbered every row. I'm just going to use a ruler. And of course, I've got 13 beads, okay, which is, I've got 14 threads for my 13 beads. And so basically, when I'm taking my needle and I'm putting beads on it, I'm putting this bead on first, second, third, fourth. I'm going this way, okay, for the way I'm doing it. And then I just literally, cover each one and slowly work my way down the pattern, literally just following along. So obviously these are the red beads, these are the white beads. Further down, when I get into the letters, I will have the black beads, for example, okay? All right, so let me thread, and I'll be back in a second here. Okay, so I threaded my needle. The thread that I used, as I said, was the Nymo thread. Basically, it's a nylon thread, fairly strong. Different people, you can use S-lon thread. They do not recommend, I think it's cotton and silk, no, polyester and silk, I think, because it could stretch over time. And again, if you're going to put this much work into a project, you don't want it to, slowly stretch over time. So some people will use, what is that called? I think it's Fireline is another one that they use, which is basically it's a fishing line. You can't use it for fishing, but basically that's what it is. It's a thinner fishing line, basically. So the first thing you're going to do is you need to knot it. So depending on whether you're right-handed or left-handed, I am right-handed. I typically will knot on the right-hand side because of the way I like to hold things and which hand tends to be stronger for what I do, but you could potentially start it on the other side. So I'm going to knot it on this very last thread. Okay, and I'm going to leave a long enough tail for myself because I don't like, cutting it off and having a tail hanging out, obviously. I would like to be able to thread that back through some of the beads so that, it's hidden. Okay, so I'm going to just do, and I tend to double knot it just to make sure that the knot is secure. Okay. All right. Okay, so we've got that there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this further down for you guys just to be able to see. All right. The reason I have this here as a chip clip basically is that when you start the first couple of rows, there's nothing to hold it, so it kind of gets kind of wonky. I like to have a very crisp edge to it, and so what I end up doing is I end up pushing it against here, and it allows my bottom to stay crisp as I'm going higher up the pattern here. Okay, so I'm going to need to start off. I'm going to need my 13. Okay, so I got my 13 beads on there, okay? So what you want to do is you want to take it underneath, okay? And I'll show you a different way of doing this if you don't like this particular way. And basically you need to find that every space that you have between the threads, you need to have 1 bead. So it takes, once you've got it started, it's easier, but I just kind of like literally just tap it a little bit until they're all inside the beads there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it with my finger here, okay? And by holding it with my finger here, I'm going to pull this needle through. When I'm pulling this needle through, this thread will be underneath the threads. The beads are in between the threads, okay, so let me do that first. And I'm not going to pull it all the way through because I've got quite a bit of thread that I put. They say about two spans finger to finger, you know, across like wingspans, and then another half. But my arms seem to be shorter, so I need to do longer than that. But it's a very long tail to have, okay? So what I end up doing is I just go up to where it becomes a single thread. So I'm going to pull it through. There we go, okay? All right. Ah! Do you see what happened there? Again, not the end of the world. Of course, it has to happen during. Okay, so let's say this happens. Okay, again, not the end of the world. I don't have the needle there anymore, but you can. All right, just put them all the way back through. Okay, and hold it with your finger. Okay, that's the other way of doing it if you didn't like using the needle. Okay, so give me a second here. Oh, that's not gonna work. Hold on. It's a little tangled. Okay. Alright, let's do it one more time. Third time's a charm. Alright, there we go. There we go. Okay. Okay, there we go. Alright. So now I'm down to a single thread on either side. That's why I don't tend to like to have a very long tail, because the more you pull it, the more likely it is that things are going to fall out of place. Now I've got to go back the other way, so do it slowly to make sure you don't poke yourself. But this time when I'm going through the beads, the reason I've pushed up the beads is that the bead hole is past these bottom threads. And as you put the needle back through, you should be, depending, you know, on the color of your beads and the color of your thread, you should be able to see a little bit of the needle above, on top of all of these, okay? So now I've got it. I'm going to pull it through, okay? And so because I've got so much thread on this side, so much thread on this side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the loop on this side as I pull it, okay? So I'm going to wait till it's single again as I pull it through. All right, oh, hold on, okay? All right, so I've got a single on that side, and literally I'm just pulling it through. And again, if you're going to get, like, a lot of times things get knotted, and typically, not always, but typically when things get knotted, they get knotted because the tail, where it's double, gets caught in somehow in between the thread. So if you can get that tail out of that mixture, everything usually undoes itself, okay? But again, there, you know, I can be spectacular and find other ways for the knots to come by, okay? All right, so what you want is that at some point, and this is the tail I'm going to get out of the way shortly because I'm going to wind that in, but I just want it out of my way here, so I'm just going to wind it here for now. Okay, so what you want to do is you're going to start it somewhere. So I've started it, let's say I started here, okay? All right, so you want to have it so that it's not pulling in, and then you want to pull it on this side, okay? So it's also not pulling in. So if I were to pull it really tight on both sides, it would start to get tighter and tighter. So I don't mind, okay? So the fact that it's like this, all right, now it's basically holding in all the beads themselves. It's not super loose, okay? But you don't want to keep going wonky because otherwise your selvage edges will be wonky as well, all right? So I'm going to do the second one, all right, exactly the same way, all right? And every row is exactly the same, except for if you have color changes, you're going to follow your pattern with the color changes and put whatever it is that you need. So my second row also has 13 red, okay? Now also keep in mind, if you're putting some sort of clasp, I'm using, I don't know what kind of clasp you call it, but basically it's a tube at the end, and then it's an adjustable clasp, okay? So that tube is going to literally, this first row of beads is actually going to be inside that tube, so I will not see it. So keep that in mind if you're using that particular type of clasp. So again, I'm going to do the exact same thing. There we go, get them all in between there, okay? Hold it. All right, there we go. Cool. So I come down to a single thread, and I clearly made my tail way too long because I like to have a single thread before this. There's my single thread. Now I'm going to go through, back again. Okay. Now, if you do not get all of them, okay, so if for some reason you skip one and this needle goes under the thread instead of over the thread, that bead, when you pull it across, will fall down and you'll have to redo it. Okay, again, not the end of the world. If the beads aren't on your needle, you saw that you could literally just lift up the thread, hold it, and do it that way. Also, I have a larger loom that I'm working on right now where the needle is not long enough to go through all the different threads on the loom. So literally, I can't even use the needle to begin with. So I literally put all the beads in the proper order on the needle, put it down at the very end of the thread, and I hold the thread up basically and put it in only, like, I think it's got 65 spaces on the one that I'm using upstairs, and this needle's just not long enough. So basically what I do is I'll start the beads in this one. Actually, I end up starting the beads on this side, and I literally hold it, I'll hold it this way, for example, put the beads through, pull it through, and then set up the next set of beads. So if you have shorter fingers than I do, for example, and you can't do all the beads in one shot, it's not the end of the world. Let me see if I can do one, show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so here I'm going to pull this one through. All right, I'm going to hold this. All right, I pull this through. Nope. Okay, I'm going to bring it down. Okay, so they line up. I'm going to continue pulling. Okay, because I want these to be proper. I do not want a loop on this end. Okay, so I need to make sure that it's pulled. Okay, and once that's pulled, I can pull the other side. Again, I want to hold it, and I'm going to start shoving this downwards. Okay, now the other problem that you may run into is that as you're going through, even though you're on top, you've gone through one of these threads. You'll notice that because as soon as you try and push down your beads, one bead will not move because it's literally sewn to this location of the thread. Obviously, don't panic. You're just literally going to take the thread off the needle. You're going to obviously remove the thread from those particular beads and just redo it. Okay, just don't leave it and keep going because it's going to cause, it's going to wreak havoc later on. Okay, so let me see if I can show you. So a couple of things I forgot to address as I was showing you the beginning there is the amount of thread that you're using at the beginning. For me, my arms are never long enough. So when even though I put a ridiculous amount of thread on my needle, it'll probably get me to about here, okay? And it will be just a little bit before I need to finish my project, which is really irritating. So I'm going to have to knot it, finish off the end. So what I would do here with this end here, once I have, hold on, where is that end that we started with? So this end right here, okay, once I've got a few more rows in, because of course I haven't corrected my stuff yet, I will basically fish back through, make maybe a knot on the other side, fish back through, and cut the tail so that it's not obviously sticking out. But wherever you end up cutting your thread and knotting it, you're going to make a weak spot somewhere in your work. So you're going to want to put a little bit of a dab of glue, not enough that it's noticeable, on that. And then do the same thing. You're going to, knot it, run your tail through on the other side, knot it on the other side, and, and then fish the actual tail in. The other thing is to figure out, how many beads do you need, first of all, right? So I started to get a little frustrated because I'm like, well, these tubes are not very expensive, but again, how many of these tubes would I need to do the project that I want, especially if it's not convenient for you to go to your local bead store? And somehow I usually work on Saturdays on my craft, and Sunday the bead store that I go to is closed, and of course you can't do it, you can't get there till Monday because, you've run out of something. So the first thing I did is that I measured my husband's wrist, but you can also go like online and they'll say, the average male wrist, the average female wrist. If you're using an adjustable clasp, that gives quite a bit of leeway there. But if you want it to be exact, because the clasp you're using needs it to be exact, you want to make sure that this, works out to the size that you need. So in my case, I'm using Toho beads. They happen to be size 11 beads. Now, again, I went online and I thought, okay, well, Toho beads for 1 inch, how many beads do I have? Now, you got to keep in mind that the beads that you have, and again, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this. okay? The beads that you have, sometimes the length of the bead and the height of the bead are not the same, okay? So what I would do is I would literally take a bunch of beads, put it on my needle, for example, measure exactly how much there is in an inch. So I did that, and so basically I've got, in 1 inch I've got basically, hold on, sorry, going across. So when I go across this way, I believe it was 13 beads going across this way. And then basically I wanted to check when I was doing, and I had done a previous project, so I measured the previous project using these beads, exactly what 1 inch was. And so it was 12 beads equals 1 inch. Okay, so basically I would need 84 rows, all right, and that would give me like no give. Okay, so that would be like a clasp that needs exact, all right. So basically 90 beads would be for a 7.5 inch bracelet length. Okay. Now again, as I said, I screwed up because my husband's wrist is 7 inches, so I had to adjust. So I've got actually 87 rows. So a little bit longer about the no give, but I'm going to use an adjustable clasp, so that's not an issue. He'll be able to adjust it as need be for himself. Okay. So that is a way to calculate. And so if you look at, okay, I've got 84 rows. And again, let's pretend it was just a solid color, right? Times 13, right? So that would give you... so it's 1,092 beads. Okay, so let's pretend this was all a solid color, okay? My understanding is that these I believe these are 10 grams in there. And for the Toho beads, I believe it is 1,000 beads, approximately 1,000 beads per container. So I would probably, if it was one color, I'd probably need one and then possibly a little bit, at the end there, right? So again, I've got 3 different colors, so one of each type was not going to be an issue for me, right? But that goes based on any company of beads. There's Delica beads, Miyuki beads, so, and you can do that on your own by just making a little swatch, counting, going lengthwise and widthwise what exactly makes 1 inch, and then from there you can determine. Or if you're metric, of course, you can do it in terms of centimeters, and then figure out from there how much you will need, and in terms also of the cost, for example, right? What kind of cost are you putting into when you're making this bracelet? If somebody's asked you to make a bracelet and they want to pay you back, that sort of thing. Okay, so let me see if I can show you. Okay, so the next row, again, will have 13 beads of red. And generally, this kind of loom that you're looking at will have, will be flat, but I find it really hard on my neck and on my back. So I ended up, asking my husband for ideas, and he's actually trying to make me a loom right now that's a little bit more angled. So what I do right now is I put something to angle it. I put something obviously to stop it so it's not running all over the place. So in this scenario, for example, let's say, again, this loom was too big, my needle did not work for whatever reason, or this stuff has come off. I still need to have my thread underneath. So what I can do, okay, is I can do this, all right, and I usually have a little bit on this side, obviously, to hold, okay. Same thing, you're gonna line them up, nothing changes, okay. All right, but let's say I can't do all of them, all right. So let's say, for example, I can only, for whatever reason, let's say they go wonky or, it's too short. I can do, okay, so let's say I can only do that much for whatever reason, okay? So, a second here. All right, get back in there. Okay, so that I've done those ones. Now, right, all I'm doing is I'm lining up. Let me put down this, poke myself with a needle, I know that. Okay. Now it's just a matter of lining up the other ones. Okay. Oh, hold on. Did I lose one? How do I have... put too many on there? Ah, so I put too many on there. Okay, so that's a good way of knowing as well. You don't want to have too many beads because that screws things up as well. So either way, I'd have to redo this. But again, as soon as this one's done, right, I would do the next bunch. I would literally continue from here, continue on as many times as I need to be able to get to the end. But as you can see, I made a boo-boo. I put in an extra one there. These are size 11 beads. They're kind of small for me. And so again, make sure that you have one bead in every hole because it's very easy to skip a bead and then you've got a hole in your work. And again, make sure you don't have too many beads like I did there. Okay? So essentially all you're doing is that constantly all the way down. Okay? And then I'll show you how to finish it off. Once I get, for example, to this row here, right, I will basically take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 white beads, 4 red beads, 3 white beads, have that in that order on my needle, and then put it through, okay? And literally that's all I'm working. It's almost like a cross stitch pattern style, okay? So I'm going to undo this mistake. I'm going to carry on, obviously, and once I get towards finishing it, basically how to take it off the loom, I'm going to show you how to do that without tearing your hair out, and putting on the clasp as well, okay?